Hey guys, what's going on? It's Paul, combat veteran, MMA fighter, YouTuber, and welcome to an episode, or a pilot episode rather, of my new podcast. Right? This is, of course, for those of you that are fans of my other two channels, you know I do breakdowns of video games and other popular stuff on the internet, drawn on my experiences as a combat veteran and an MMA fighter and a guy with a grad degree in econ. But there's a lot of topics I don't have time in these videos to do the sort of deep dive that I really want to. So I thought it would be worthwhile to try to put out some information in a podcast style format. That way, a lot of the listeners can get it on audio only, but we can do it on this, I think, more interesting visual format. And the topic I wanted to talk about is something that is been sort of, I noticed is very, very popular, right? People are really curious about it, but not a lot of people or a lot of commentators on YouTube have been talking about it. And those that do have generally had some pretty lame takes, right? Some pretty unnuanced takes on it. And that is a recent Wall Street Journal article that has gone sort of viral. In fact, let's get it up here. Let's see, what do I want? I think I want this here. Yeah, I think this is what I want. Okay, so there we go. Okay, right here. There it is. This is a generation of American men gave up on college. Quote, "I just feel lost." And this talks about the fact that at four-year colleges across the United States, the ratio of men compared to women enrollment has been declining, and the degree completion rate of men relative to women has also been on the decline. They said that actually I think it's less than a decade, women will earn two college degrees, or two women will earn a four-year undergraduate degree for every man that earns one. And it's actually a fairly well-written article in terms of the data. It talks, it really breaks down the data, as it really lets you see that the enrollments for men at a lot of these four-year colleges are dropping by a lot, right? 60-40 in a lot of cases. It says here the proportion of male undergrads at UCLA fell 41% in the fall semester of 2020 and from 45% in the fall of 2013. So over 7 years, that sounds like about a 10% decline in male enrollment, right? And it's a real problem, obviously, right? And most of the takes are pretty poor, right? It actually has this really cool graphic that I think is pretty informative, that covers the way that, especially among lower income and middle income men, regardless of race, are less likely to enroll in four-year colleges, right? And that women, again, in almost every race and subcategory, are more likely to. Now, here, I have a problem with the way this is presented. So the way a lot of articles will write nowadays, there are a lot of journalists will cover topics like this, is that they will start by giving you this great data-driven overview. They will talk about polling data, they'll talk about statistics, right? But then, and this is just good writing, they need to bring it home with a human side. They need to find a particular person to give people a face to the data, right? That's good storytelling, and it's good journalism, and but I have some problems with the way the Wall Street Journal is framing it, right? And they find three examples, I think, of young men of way different backgrounds, but they all sort of went to college and then dropped out and are working in these like pretty low wage, low growth jobs, like feeling pretty listless and disconnected, right, from society as a whole. And I have no doubt that some of the men that drop out or choose not to enroll in college fit in this category. But I don't think there's any data that shows that this is the fate befalling young men who would in a previous generation be college bound, right? I think the Wall Street Journal has this narrative that they want to shape that says that, men that don't go to college are going to turn into like, World of Warcraft playing basement dwellers, right? That'll never leave their parents' house. And a little bit of that is the sky is falling type journalism. Young people today are not like we were. We hardworking, blah, blah, blah. It's a trope as old as time. But I'm bothered by the fact that they didn't portray the other side, right? Non-college or men who didn't attend college but have increasingly find themselves in stable employment, working hard, doing well. The classic example being men who go into trades. And I think that's an unfair characterization, right? That isn't really shown in the data, right? There's no data that's like, 80% of male enrollment is driven by men who report anxiety or inability to keep up with classes or something like that, right? So, again, I think you can find examples of this what sometimes it's anecdote, right? A single instance, and they try to use it to illustrate their larger thesis. This is something that almost every side does when they have a boogeyman, right? In a big country like the United States, whoever your bad guy is, when you have 350 million people, you're going to find that 1 in a million case 350 times, right? You could find a 1 in a million case every single day for a year of pick your salacious story, right? So I'm always like pretty skeptical when I see a story that's driven by these like one-off sort of weird cases and not backed by data. And so the other thing that I think is important to understanding this that the journal doesn't acknowledge is that the math behind college is bad and has gotten worse every year. And what I mean by that is that the value of a college degree is definitely, certainly, for sure declining, right? And I think our society, right, can you really be a podcaster and not have an unverifiable rant about what you think is wrong with society? I think I'd get demonetized if I didn't have a rant about what society was like, right? A better editor would put the Joker meme up here. Hey, we live in a society. But one of the things that is fairly consistently true in the data is that among higher earning majors, they tend to skew male, right? And there's a larger conversation about women in STEM and encouraging women to feel like they can. And but at the end of the day, it seems like our society values men, or men see their own value, if you prefer, through their ability to earn money, right? As a proxy for working hard or a proxy for accomplishing things or even a proxy for value. I think that's sort of a fraught idea. I don't like it, right? Picasso, I don't know if Picasso made any real money as an artist, but nobody would question his value to society, right? Herman Melville was a low-paid government bureaucrat, but nobody would question whether or not Moby Dick contributed to society. So, the idea that a man's value is tied to his ability to earn money is sort of fraught. But regardless, that is the culture or acculturation that we do. And so the result is that men go to college degrees, not all of them, but disproportionately, with the intent of earning money. And I think this bears out both, again, in the data about college majors. Let's see if we can Google it real quick. So college majors by gender earning potential. Google auto completes it. So clearly I am not the first person to discuss this. Okay, let's pull this bad boy up. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Now, again, Harvard Business Review, right? This is the exact same point flipped on its head. Women dominate college majors that lead to lower paying work. And I would suspect these are professions that broadly offer compensation in terms of like moral goodness, like doing the right thing. Right, so here we go. Men sort into college majors that end up paying more, right? The same statement framed indifferently. Computer science, electrical engineering, chemical engineering, statistics. Listen, have you ever met anyone? I've seen some people who really love computer science, men and women. But I've never seen someone who like is passionate about engineering, right? The number of engineers I know that basically just went into the profession to make money, it doesn't shock me. It doesn't shock me at all. But they're not passionate, right? They don't love it. The number, again, you look at the majors that are disproportionately female and disproportionately lower earning, right? You see healthcare administration, social work, anthropology, human resources. These seem to be ones that, while they don't offer a ton of monetary compensation, compensate the practitioner by being a true social good, right? By really helping people in a concrete way. All stuff that is awesome, but again, indicates that the people that choose it are not driven to just show their value by earning money, right? And again, you can see the worst of these are in the, one man for every 5 women, and the other side, mechanical engineering, 1 woman for every 10 men. So there is a real gender divide in terms of high-paying majors. Okay, so having established that men seem to be ahead of the curve in terms of value, like extracting monetary value from their college experience, as opposed to a general knowledge, a general maturation, or the ability to learn a skill that will make society a better place writ large. What's the math that they are looking at here in 2020? Well, I got the data right here. This is from Statistica, but they originated it from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And you can see here, so blue is going to be your male earnings, median earnings per education, mean earnings for male based on level of education, and female. You can see clearly that at every education level, women earn less than their male counterparts. But there is some other interesting stats. You can see a male with some college, no degree, their mean income, right, is going to be $51,000. This is as of 2019, so I'm sure COVID threw everything for a loop. In contrast, completing a bachelor's degree, the median male is going to earn $87,000. Again, that's the mean earnings based on educational attainment. So that's the way to think of that, is the mid-career earnings of those people, right? And you could see also just how gender biased the labor market is. You have, $59,000 is what a woman with the mean salary of a woman who gets a bachelor's degree, and that is roughly equivalent to the earnings of a man with an associate's degree. Again, the reasons are complicated, and I'm definitely not going to dive into them for this podcast, but it's a little more than a Twitter slogan for sure, as almost every complex issue is. But okay, so we know that, right? And let's take a look at what our friend, the 4-year private university costs, because this is the other factor, right? You've got to look at what a university degree will earn you, and you have to look at what a university degree will cost you, okay? So again, punching this into Google, we see that a private, nonprofit 4-year college, the vast majority of colleges in the United States, are going to run you, after tuition, room and board, and other fees, $48,000 a year. Actually, it rounds up, $49,000. $49,000 a year in 2019. Okay. So here's the question, right? how do we understand then the math? Because we know, right, we can see very clearly that by finishing that degree, you will end up averaging $87,000 a year over time, over your earnings. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. So let's actually run some math, right? Let's do it. Now, to understand this, you have to think using something called the time value of money. And the way to understand the time value of money is this. Money is like, well, it's an opportunity cost is the best way to think of it. If I have $1, right, today, and I can do two things with that dollar. I can go and I can purchase a candy bar from the vending machine, and I can eat it, and I can experience $1 worth of pleasure because chocolate is delicious, especially you get like a peanut butter cup. I think actually I would get a Butterfinger. That's what I would get right now, right? Feeling like that peanut butter chocolate combo just can't be beat, right? So I spend it on a Butterfinger. Get it, eat it, experience some happiness, right? Or the other thing I could do with that money is invest it in the second best investment opportunity after Butterfingers, and that would be a low-cost index fund. So that means that if I take that dollar, stick it in a low-cost index fund, we know that an average over time it's going to earn after inflation probably about 7 to 9%. So, okay, 7%. So that means that the actual cost of that Butterfinger is going to be the value of $1, not just $1, but it's going to be $1 that would otherwise be invested in something that will 10 years down the line, let's say grow to be worth $3, right? So I can have a Butterfinger or I can have $3 10 years from now. And there's a mathematical way to sort of equalize those costs, to compare them based on a specific year. And that is the time value of money. Okay. So we can do, and most of the calculators online, right, they have some, and they're for like business school, and they focus on a project where it's like, oh, for the next 4 years, the factory you build will earn you, $30,000. What's the value of the factory today? And they're good problems, and it's an awesome, you should definitely, if you don't know how to do net present value, you'll never really understand how corporations or the very, very wealthy in the United States think about everything they do. So you absolutely should, because it's like gains insight into how a company thinks. But let's do it for our friends. Let's do two hypotheticals, right? Okay, so here we go. We have college debt, and let's take Paul. Paul is not me, right? My college experience was a little different because the Army bankrolled both my undergraduate and my master's degree. Partially my master's degree. I got some scholarship help. I had some savings. So when I graduated my master's degree, actually, I had spent every dime I owned. I had $500 to my name, which is not a great look for a 27-year-old. But again, as we'll see in this math, that Paul with a net $500 was actually doing awesome. Okay, so here is college-bound Paul's earnings, right, over time. Now, let's talk about someone else. Let's talk about someone who didn't go to college. Let's talk about John, right? We're going to use some men's names because that's what the article's really about. And we'll talk about John's college earnings, right? Okay, so at age 18, young Paul enrolls in the mean private university, right? He enrolls in the mean. Actually, we need two more columns. I'm sorry. We need one here. Yep. And this is net worth of Paul. And here is net worth of John, right? Okay. So at age 18, young Paul signs on the dotted line, takes out college loans to have the college experience. Unlike real Paul, who didn't do anything interesting at college, he just studied and worked and did ROTC and worked out. This Paul wants the full college experience. He wants to get drunk with other 19-year-olds in a 40-year-old house that's basically on its nearly dilapidated, right? He wants to go to D-list acts, music acts hired by the university at a tremendous cost, right? So he starts off with a negative $48,000. Okay, and we're going to, there you go, it's money. Okay, all these are money. Okay, so what happens at 19? Well, remember, Paul is going to do something else. He is going to take his previous college debt, and that is going to grow by the interest rate of student loans. What is the interest rate of student loan in the United States? What is the average student loan interest rate? It is 5.8%. Yep. So it is going to be times, we'll round that up to 6, right? Okay, so we have that previous debt growing at 6% interest, and we add on to it the fact that he's got to pay for another year, giving us plus, oh yeah, there you go. He's not earning money, he's losing money, right? That student loan goes straight to the university. And there we go. 21 years old, Paul signs his last student loan disbursement, and he has $209,000 in debt. Ouch. Okay. But that's okay. That's okay, because now Paul is 22, and he is going to earn $87,000 a year. That's pretty good. And that's the mean, right? So he's actually going to have to ramp up over time and then eventually pay it off, right? So he would really, his earnings trajectory would look like a bell curve, right? He would peak at around 55, and then usually your last 10 years, you see earnings start to decline as people scale back their work and prepare to retire, right? Or maybe some people get to retire early and they push down the average. But this is a mean, so we're just going to treat it like he earns $87,000 every year until he retires, right? But and he is going to retire at 65. Okay, so that's pretty good, right? Now, let's say, right, now what we need to do is we got to come up with what's called an amortization table, and we've got to figure out what it's going to look like for Paul, who's going to pay this debt off over 10 years, right? So he has $209,000, but it's growing, right? And it's also going to be paid off over 10 years. So what we want is a student loan amortization table, right? There we go, amortization schedule. Student loan calculator. So this is something, a calculator that automatically does what my tiny military caveman brain can't do, which is, of course, come up with a way to show, okay, I'm paying off the student loan, but it's growing at an interest rate. So the loan amount is $209,000. The loan term is going to be a standard 10-year loan, and the interest rate is 5.8%. Okay, so here we go. What does the balance of the loans look like? Okay, so here he is today at, Paul makes his first payment, right? But let's check what the payments are over time, right? So here he is, 2021, his first payment. He's just graduated. So let's bring him to October 2022. He is right here at 22. There you go. Look at that. He's made a real dent, right? Now he is in October the next year, $174,000. Okay, still almost $200,000 in debt, but that's a lot. That's a lot, but he's going to pay it off, right? He's going to he's going to get it done, right? And then we go, hey, October of 2024, it's only $156,000 of debt, guys. He's 24. He has so much time to pay it off, right? So, there he is, October 2025. It's getting better. Guys, he's doing great. He's going to do great. I don't know what we were worried about, right? Whew. Okay, 2026. Let's see. Where's he at? He is, okay, 2026. Paul is 26 years old, and he has $117,000 in debt, right? Okay. Hopefully, that's assuming he has never missed a payment. He has never had to put his loans in deferment. Oh, there you go. 2027, and look at Paul. 2027, and he is $96,000 in debt. Dude, the end's in sight. The end is in sight, right? I hope he doesn't have to apply for a loan for a house, because I don't know who's going to give you a loan on a house when that is what you owe. Okay, he's 28. He is $73,000 in debt. Okay, it's coming down, right? There's October 2029. He's just $50,000 in debt, guys. Okay, so where is he at on his 30th birthday? Paul is about to turn 30 years old, the big 30, and good for him. He only owes $25,000 of his undergraduate degree. That, bear in mind, he left 8 years ago at this point, right? So here we go, and that's it. He's cleared it by the next year, right? Of course, he has to pay $2,000 a month, and there you go. He is 31, and he has done it. Good work, Paul. You worked hard. You really did right. You're 31 years old. You paid off that student loan. You earned a lot, right? We're going to make sure this is all negative so that the math actually works out in the calculator. Okay. All right. Now, let's model what Paul's net worth is. Because as you guys all know, right, income is income, but net worth's a good proxy for things like how much disposable or lifestyle income you have. Keep in mind that according to this, Paul, for the past 10 years, paid $2,299 every single month. That is more than most people's rent. It's pretty wild, okay? So, let's say after taxes and after expenses, right? After everything Paul is able to save, let's say he's able to save, let's be generous. Let's say Paul can save a third of his income. Or let's say a quarter. A quarter is reasonable. Quarter is actually would put him on the financial independence early retirement track. Most people say you're supposed to save about 15%. And really, for someone like Paul, that's probably his best bet with this huge student loan debt. Okay? So actually, that's what we'll do. We will say that Paul has saved 0.15% times his salary, right? So first year, he saves $13,000. That's pretty good, okay? Next year, right, he saves the same thing. He makes the same contribution plus his previous contribution. Remember, he's invested it. He's got it in a 401k. So it's going to grow. It's going to grow at, we talked about this, 7% after inflation, but we are going to say 9%, right? That's pretty good. Paul's doing okay, right? And by the way, 9% is pretty optimistic. You know, a lot of people are saying that the growth trajectory going forward is going to be slowed considerably. So it's hard to say. It's also hard to say what's going to happen with inflation, right? But he saves 15% of his old income, and he saves the previous month's income, right? Meaning that his net worth grows quite a bit. He actually is doing okay, right? So by the time he pays that off, right? So that is his savings. But remember, this isn't the whole story. His net worth is also governed by the fact that he has student loan debt. So when we factor in this student loan debt, right, you can see that things get a little funky here. Okay, we need one more column. insert column to the right. There we go. So now we need to, let's see, this is not net worth. This is actually savings. And let's see, here is net worth. And that is just the sum of his savings and his debts. Savings and debts. There you go. And we'll autofill it. Okay. And let's let Paul work until he retires at 65. Congrats, Paul. Wow. But the true testament to the power of compound savings is that if Paul works until he's 65, he will end and saves 15% of his salary every single month. He will pay off his debts, pay off his student loans, and have $6 million when he retires at 65. That's a comfortable retirement, Paul. But remember, he will have a net worth of, at 27, he will be worth $1,700. Oof, 27 and you're worth $1,000. That actually puts him slightly above the real Paul, who was worth $500 when he graduated from grad school. Okay, let's take a look. Let's model John. Now, we know that John, as someone who didn't go to college, is going to make $51,000 a year. That's not great, actually. It's not great. Okay, but John is going to have goose eggs, zeros, for his college debt all the way through. Now, Paul, you're probably asking, in this model, what about houses and cars? Well, here's the difference. The difference with a house or a car is that if you decide you want to liquidate that debt, you can sell it for, in the case of a car, even at least most of what you paid for it. It's backed by an asset. But the degree is not. I can't sell a diploma back to the university and recomp my money. It's an unsecured loan, and that's sort of the problem there, right? So John doesn't owe any debt, right? So, and he earns $51,000 a year, right? Again, you can see we're playing, and it's a mean. We're going to average it over his entire lifetime. Now, here's the thing. John is also going to save 15% of his income, right? And we might even say a little more because in this scenario, right, John can contribute $2,000. Potentially, he can contribute some subset of his income that Paul couldn't. But actually, let's just do it as though it were 15%, right? So 0.15 times his earnings over time, and he starts off with $7,000 in his first year. That's pretty good, Paul. All right, and then he takes the previous one, and it grows by 9% because he has it in a low-cost index fund, and he adds into it. He adds into it. He adds into it another 7,650. He adds into it another 15% of his income. Something isn't right here. That's because I multiplied it by 109 times, not 1.9 times. Okay, and let's make sure we got this other math correct as well. Savings, right? Previous savings growing at 1.9%. Yep. Okay, great. Perfect. So, prior savings grows, and he contributes. All right, and let's see how Paul's net worth changes over time. So, what happened to Paul? Well, even if he just saves 15%, right, he still comes out, it's actually almost a wash, right? While Paul's net worth, basically, he starts off the race in way better shape, right? You can see the net worth data here. Obviously, John is worth $34,000 when Paul is worth a negative $209,000. Yeesh. And when Paul hits his low point of being 27 years old and worth $1,700, John, who didn't go to college, is worth $116,000. right? Now, things start to change, right? Actually, fairly shortly thereafter, right? So you can see as Paul clears his debts, the last $25,000 gets cleared, and they are about equal at 31 years old, right? Now, as time goes on, of course, the college degree with its higher earning potential starts to take over, right? And Paul, with his college degree, becomes a millionaire at 45, whereas John becomes a millionaire at 47, right? And of course, the last couple of years, you start to see all those compounding interests really pay off because at 65, Paul retires with $6 million and John retires with $5 million. So what does all that mean? Well, what it means is that in that middle age area, that middle age race, so to speak, right, it's actually neck and neck. And here's the other thing to consider is that it's not that likely that both John and Paul will actually save at the same rate. Let's consider that John is actually able to save a little bit more than Paul, obviously because Paul has to pay student loans. Let's say John can actually save 20% instead of 15, right? Because obviously Paul, while he's earning less, he doesn't have to pay student loans, right? And after taxes and bills, $2,000 represents a lot of your earning potential. Okay, so now he's making $10,000, right? He's saving $10,000 a year of his $50,000 salary. So, again, that's assuming not even the full value of that student loan payment gets saved, but your savings rate increases just 5%, right? That's that's about right, $2,000 a year. Not a month, a year. What does that $2,000 that doesn't have to go to a student loan payment do for John? It changes the math a lot. Now suddenly, at 65, John retires with more money. Now let's get even wilder. Let's change the assumptions again. Let's assume John saves 15% of his income and he contributes what would have been Paul's student loan payments. So at 22, he changes that $10,000 savings to a $1,200 savings. What does that look like? Let's see. So, wow. So now, assuming that they both save equally, right? That they both save at around 15% a year, but John contributes just John contributes just 1 month's worth of student loan payments into the retirement account. John beats the brakes off of Paul. John retires with $7 million in the bank, right? It's tough to even conceive of it, of how much that skews the data. Now imagine, well, we don't have to imagine. We can do it. Let's get really crazy. Let's say John takes what would have been that student loan payment, right? Though they're making a third as much. So $2,000 a month. So that's what? $24,000. Yeah, okay, let's round down. Let's say $20,000. So John saves his 15% of his income plus the money that would have gone into a student loan payment that he now doesn't have to make. What's it all look like? Let's find out. Right? So he is saving how much? $20,000. There we go. Okay. So his regular retirement contribution plus that money that would have otherwise gone to a student loan means, oops, screwed everything up. Let's get the assumptions right, and then we'll go from there. Whoa, wow. Okay, so if we're assuming that they both save 15%, but John gets to put in almost, but not quite, a student loan payment, John retires with $14 million, Paul retires with $6 million. So you guys can see clearly, the math on college is not great if your motive is just money, right? It's just not, right? I mean, literally, you're going to retire potentially with twice as much. Now, this has some assumptions. This assumes that an 18-year-old can actually save 15% of their money, or 7% if you get a 401k, and that they're going to contribute what would have been a student loan payment to a savings account, which is also pretty bold. But it doesn't have a lot of factors in it, right? For example, who is going to be more likely to buy a house at 30, right? Is it going to be Paul with a net worth of, Paul, who has a net worth of $145,000, or is it going to be John with a net worth of nearly $500,000? Or, another way to think of it, who's going to hit $100,000 in net worth earlier and be ready to buy a house? Well, there's John, who will be ready to buy a house at 21, and Paul, who will purchase a house when he hits $100,000 in net worth at 30. So that's 9 years of equity and housing market gains that John could access that Paul may not be able to, right? So again, but it assumes, of course, a level of responsibilities to 18-year-olds that not all of us have. So all in all, again, this is what bothers me about this Wall Street Journal article, is that there is this look of like man as the sad, dejected sack, unwelcome in the college world, when the reality, I think, is that men, while they may not be running spreadsheets like we just ran today, I think they are intuiting, right? They're sensing that being a 30-year-old with, being 21 with $200,000 in debt, or being a 30-year-old with a negative $24,000 loan balance is no way to be. That's just not a way to live your life, right? And I think that the bad deal that these private colleges offer students is the driving force, right? If getting to college really mattered, they would look at the European model, or even the model practiced in countries like Brazil, where state universities are free or low cost, right? They are, instead of $200,000, they are $5,000 or $6,000. So overall, guys, I think that is the real factor to be thought about when we look at how college and college attendance choices impacts men particularly. But I honestly think, again, men are just ahead of the curve, right? Because they seem more responsive to money. I think women will catch up. They will do the same math. I'm surprised, honestly, because these higher earning professions, the math makes more sense, right? If you were a woman, and actually we can run this. Let's run this real quick, right, before we wrap up here. So we know that a woman with a bachelor's degree, $59,000 of median income. So let's see, $59,000, right? Her savings are way worse, and her growth trajectory is also way worse. So yeah, she is 30, and she won't hit her $100,000 mark by 31, and she will retire with $4 million in the bank, as opposed to the $14 million that her male counterpart can, who never attended college. So yeah, this is wild. This math is wild. Now, obviously, you can see I sort of threw this spreadsheet together at the last, as we talked, right? So if I missed some assumptions, right, and some of them, obviously, this is all assumptions, but this is like a ballpark sense of how these things might play out over time. So thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for listening in. And I'm going to try to get this podcast up on some different platforms. But definitely, if you enjoy it, listen to it on this one. And let me know. Is there something I missed? What other factors might be driving men away from choosing to go to college? And do you think the college drop-off will eventually spread to women, or do you think this separation is going to keep going? Okay, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.